We've now reached the material and texture phase of this video series. Instead of living with the default material that Maya assigns whatever you create, you can create custom materials, adjust those, and then also bring in texture maps via the ones Maya provides or custom bitmaps from external sources to create more texture detail. And the whole process is generally referred to as texturing. Texturing allows you to create much more realism or much more interesting surface qualities. So how does that happen? Well, texturing, whether it involves assigned materials or creating texture maps, happens mostly through the Hypershade window. So let's take a look at the Hypershade, and I'm going to talk about its various components. So if you want to bring that up, go to Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. So I'll click Hypershade, and the Hypershade window will pop up. And there it is. So let me talk about the basic parts of this window. Well, on the top, the Hypershade has its own menu. And we'll talk about some of these menu options later on. Below that is a series of shortcut buttons. At the top right is an area where you have listed all the things you have that you can utilize inside the Hypershade. In other words, it's all the nodes that you can work with. Now, some of the nodes are material nodes, and in fact, the first tab is called Materials. And these three materials are provided by default. There's the default Lambert, and that's actually assigned to any new object that's created inside the program. There's also a particle node that's assigned to any new particles, and a shader node that's assigned to any material that requires some kind of special effects glow. So these materials are provided for you automatically to make the program function on a basic level. However, you can make new materials. When you make new materials, they'll also appear inside this area. There are other tabs too. There'll be a tab for textures once you create textures, a tab for utilities, which are special nodes that apply mathematical functions and whatnot. And there's additional tabs you may or may not use as often, but there'll be tabs for all your lights. If you have lights in a scene, you'll see lights listed here. Whatever cameras you have are listed here. In fact, here are the 4 default cameras you get, which include the front, the perspective, persp, side, and top, and various other tabs are a little bit more unusual. Most of the time you'll be working with materials, textures, occasional utilities, and every once in a while it's good to see what lights you have and what cameras you have. So in any case, this area right here will list what nodes are currently in the scene, and will let you grab those nodes should you need to adjust them or make custom shading networks which involve several nodes strung together. So below this list area here, down here at the bottom right, it's a work area. And it says work area right here. The work area is a place where you can create custom connections and make custom shading networks where you combine multiple nodes together. It's also a place where you can just examine any pre-existing network. Now right now we don't have any networks because we have no textures and nothing really fancy. But once we start creating custom textures, we'll come down here and take a look at the network that gets generated by doing that texture mapping. Over here along the left is the Create tab. And the Create tab includes a long list of available materials and other nodes that you can create. This is just a list of potential nodes. So what you can do is choose a node from this list and have it appear over here and then start to use it. Now it's a long list and it's broken up into several sections. The two main sections are Maya and Mental Ray. The Maya section includes materials and related nodes that are designed for the Maya software renderer. In other words, they come with Maya standard. The Mental Ray section includes Mental Ray materials and shaders. And shaders is just another name for materials. We'll talk more about that later. Now, within each one of those sections, there's subsections. For instance, under Maya, there's surface, volumetric, displacement, and so on. These are actually filters. This list is a set of filters. If you just click the word Maya, you get all the Maya nodes in a big long list on this column here, and there's a slider you can scroll through them. However, if you don't want to see them all at once, you can filter that by clicking on one of the subcategory words like surface. For instance, surface shows you just the standard Maya materials. Or I can go to 2D textures, and here are the standard Maya 2D textures. Same with Mental Ray. You can click on one of the Mental Ray subcategories like materials, and here are the Mental Ray materials. Now we're going to get to Mental Ray later, So for now, we're going to be dealing strictly with Maya materials and textures because those can be rendered by Maya software. Maya software cannot render mental ray materials or shaders, so we're going to stick with this top set initially. But in any case, this top set is a list of potential nodes you can create. So if I go back to Surface, these are materials I can create, and once I create one, they'll appear over here. Now we're going to talk about how to create and assign materials in a separate video, but just keep in mind this section is simply an area that lists the potential materials and related nodes you can create. A few other things about this window that are kind of handy. One is you see a series of little spheres here, little sphere icons. These are buttons that determine the size of your icons that appear in this list window here. So you can have a small icon display or a very large icon display. And based on how many materials you have in your scene, sometimes it's handy to adjust the size so you can see them better. The second thing is the work area can be controlled with your camera keys. Now there's nothing in here now, but I want to make something just so you can see it and so you can use the camera keys. Now if you want something to appear in here, what you can do is force it to jump from your list down here so you can work on it. And the trick for doing that is to go up to a node up here in your list, for instance this Lambert node, right mouse button key over that node, and go to Graph Network. When I choose Graph Network, the node my mouse is over will appear down here in the work area. Now if it's a complex shading network, you might actually see more than one node attached by connection lines. But since I'm dealing with something fairly simple at this point, I only have a single node. And when I say node, any box you see up here is a node. Remember, there are nodes in the hypergraph and nodes in the outliner. Well, these are nodes also. They're also displayed here. So there's a Lambert node, which is a material node. If I go to the cameras, these are each camera shape nodes and so on. So if I say node, it simply relates to a single node, which is represented by a single box. So I have one node here in the work area, and what I can do is use my camera keys to move around. I can press Alt, right mouse, and dolly. Alt, middle mouse to scroll. Another thing you can do is change the size of this window by grabbing this dotted line right here and dragging up. So by using your camera keys, you have a lot of flexibility to move around here. Now for a single node, it's not a big deal, but when you have more complex materials, chain networks, textures, and so on, you'll have multiple nodes down here with connection lines, and it helps to be able to move your camera around and frame things up. Now if you want to get rid of this view and clear out this work area, what you can do is click your right mouse button over an empty area of that area, go to Graph, Clear Graph. And Clear Graph just empties out the work area. Now nothing's permanently destroyed, it just clears out the work area. A work area is really what it sounds like. It's an area to work on nodes, to work on shading networks, to work on custom connections, but the view is not permanent. In other words, it doesn't destroy any nodes. You still have your nodes up here in your list area. So those are the main areas. So we're going to return to all this in more detail as we discuss how to create materials, assign materials, how to create and map textures.